Okay, I'm here with my dad, and he's going to tell a story about his two grandparents that immigrated from Greece. And here you go.
Okay, my grandparents came from Greece to America in 1910. And of course, to find a better way of life like other immigrants that came from all different parts of Europe. My grandparents settled in Chicago. It was a South Side community called Roseland. They lived in the Pullman row houses owned by George Pullman. And this is a man who invented the Pullman railroad car. It was very famous in those early 1900s. My mother and aunt were twins. They were born, let me remember this, 1914, I think. Both told us stories as what they were growing up and how difficult it was to go to the American schools, because basically they could not speak any English. They didn't understand English, they could not speak English, and they remember crying every day in school because they didn't speak or understand any of the English that the teacher was talking to them about. And of course the kids, they couldn't make friends because most of the kids were Americans, and if they weren't from speaking English families, they were Polish, Italian, so a lot of them were in the same situation as my mother and my aunt. Actually, there were two little 6-year-old girls that remember how difficult it was to adjust to the new environment. As a result, when my mother and had children, which was me and my sister and brother, they refused to let us attend Greek school, and this was actually a real tradition of Greek families at the time. They all went to Greek school in the 50s and 60s and learned the Greek customs and learned the Greek language real well. And my mother insisted on not letting us do this because she remembers how her and her twin sister, which was my Aunt Stell, how difficult it was for them to adjust to the American way of life, especially with the schools and everything else. Greek customs that they knew so well when they were growing up, we kind of lost a lot of those customs because we got away from the complete Greek customs as we grew up, and we kind of as a result, we kind of really regret not being able to speak Greek real well. I mean, we know some words, but we don't know a lot of words, and we don't speak it fluently at all. This is probably, as I was thinking about just with our family, but a lot of immigrant children had probably the same situation that we did. They probably felt separated and cut off from others. They found it difficult probably to make friends like my mother and aunt did. Kids couldn't understand my mother and aunt, and they couldn't understand the children that they were going to school with. Eventually they adjusted, as long as they kept going to school, and my grandmother insisted on them going to school. They eventually picked up the English language, and in fact they spoke fluent English, I remember, as I was growing up. Of course, my grandmother and grandfather, they never actually spoke English at all. They spoke very little English, and I remember when we were growing up, and that was difficult because we couldn't communicate well with them because we didn't know the Greek language, and they actually didn't speak very much English. So it was really kind of a complete changeover. That's, I think, pretty much what. That's about it. So
no, that was good.
Okay.
All right, that's the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.